Hello.
Hey, what's up, man?
Chilling, bro. How you been?
I'm good, man. Just busy working, same as you, I'm sure, man. Just hustling.
That's all we got to do, right?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Thanks for doing this.
All good, man. I'm glad we finally found time to connect. I see your zebra background every time I watch these. It makes me think of my mother-in-law because they're all into the African kind of vibe. So every time I see it, I always laugh.
It's funny because only like we would know what this means to us, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, man, just to get started, is for the listeners, Round Square. What exactly is it, and what made you get into home building? I guess.
Yeah. So you know, the journey started prior to Round Square. Round Square's been around for about 5 years now, but prior to Round Square, we had operated. My brother had a company called Devani Homes, and then we had another inner city company called Beyond Homes. And it's been, we've been in real estate for the good part of half of my life now. And, whether that was selling real estate or investing in real estate or just like learning about it. And so, I went to UC, I graduated with a marketing degree, but while I was doing that, I went and got my real estate license when I was like 18. My brother Afshin had acquired Remax House and kind of was dabbling in different types of real estate. And I was kind of helping along the way. And, he was doing some stuff out in Elbow Valley, building single family homes. And then, when you're building $1 million+ markets with the volatility in Calgary, it's very difficult to keep that as a sustainable model. And so we looked towards the inner city because he had done one project there. And, I was just graduating and I went and tried to get a job. So I wanted to pay for my degree. I went and got a 2-week stint with CB Rail and I did the whole training program. And then I realized I want to be an entrepreneur like my mom was and like my family was and what they were doing. And so, we started Beyond Homes. And right at that time, I had met my wife, Majida, who was an architect and really transformed the way that I process design. Like I was always into creative, but more into like fashion. I always had side things that I was helping friends out with art, but I didn't know how to really channel that to what I was doing in my day-to-day life. Like real estate was a channel to kind of drive finances. Right. But as soon as I was able to figure out how to apply like my passion towards the arts and learn about architecture, and learn about how that applies to the built form and start to work with Madge and Afshin on that. We did that for almost like 7 years at Beyond Homes. And we just wanted to do cool things. Like really, that's all we did. We said we wanted to build houses differently. And I thought we did a good job at doing that. And, some of those places got recognition. It was super fun. Everything was very creative. But, the market brought us back to like that $1 million place again. And I was like, okay, we're serving like, 1% of Calgarians again. And it felt like we could do more with what we were doing. And, that was kind of the epitome of Round Square is like, what do we want to do? Well, we want to build out established neighborhoods. We want to build in the most sustainable way that we can, using existing infrastructure. And we want to give families an opportunity to still live in the inner city. And so that's really how Round Square had started and kind of has morphed into this, growth. So
where did the name come from, Round Square?
Yeah. So it's funny. We were there's a guy named Ryan Gill. He runs the Gathering Community. Yeah, Ryan's been around for a minute, and so he had introduced me to one of his colleagues named Owen Reeder, and Owen was helping us kind of put together our branding package. And at the time, I kind of said the name like there was no budge in the name. Like I said, I wanted to call it 9 Squares, and 9 Squares was what Beyond had 9 squares in it. So I was like, no, I'm keeping the name. And they're like, okay, fine, if that's what you want. So they prepped a ton of deliverables. Like it was the last night. And he called me at like 10:30. He's like, hey man, like this was before giving us all of our finals. He said, I know you said that it was off the table, but what do you think about Round Square? And I was kind of like, oh shit, that's pretty good. And then he kind of sent me the Steve Jobs line about how you can't kind of,
round peg in the square hole. That's exactly what was playing in my head when I read.
Yeah. And so I was like, man, this is like exactly what we talk about is not trying to force people to fit into different forms, but providing people an opportunity to live as who they want to be. And so when I thought about that and, where that could take us, that's exactly what we wanted. Like we didn't want to force housing on anybody, but we wanted to provide optionality, accessibility, and equitability into these communities. And I think that's like philosophically how we started and through, the bumps and the bruises is how we continue to grow. Is like, that's really our mandate and our purpose. It's like, how do we provide a diverse housing option for a number of different people? And, you and I grew up in some of the same communities. Like, the most complete communities were those that you had that diversity, where you were able to live amongst those different people. And so that's something that I continue to kind of champion. And I think, within our established communities is so important, because, not all of us get to hang out in Bridgeland and, walk and on the park paths or have these amazing bike lanes. How do we create that type of environment and make that more accessible, for everybody? And I think, like, I taught a university class, and one of the kids in the class asked me, "Hey, Al, do you ever think we'll get bike lanes in Castle Ridge?" And I basically like flipped the email over to a planner, and he's like, "I just don't know how we do that, because how do we make investments back into those communities when there isn't any type of growth, or there's no vehicle to really reinvest?" And it's frustrating, right? Because it's like, people east of the Deerfoot deserve what people west of the Deerfoot get, but there's a divide, and that doesn't happen. And so, as part of my goal, obviously, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I have the same ambitions of everybody else to profitability, to success. But I also have this social obligation, I feel like, to give, the people that I come from, that I reside with, an opportunity that they never had. And so I feel like I have an obligation to figure out how to do that. And this company is a vehicle, I feel like, at times, that can allow us that opportunity.
For sure. For the people that are listening, we grew up in the northeast of Calgary. I actually used to live right across from St. Trania's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remember Farhan used to have this green Del Sol.
Yeah. Out in Whitehorn, man. That was the Whitehorn crew, Annie Gale. Yeah.
Annie Gale, yes, yeah. It's different out there for people that haven't been out there. There's the culture, the lifestyle, the opportunities. And what has made you say, I need to also look back where I came from? Because most people just say, okay, I came from there and I keep going forward. That's the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think, like, first of all, like, I'm indebted to this country and to this city particularly for, affording our parents the opportunity as immigrants and as refugees. And, none of my parents, my mom or my father, didn't have a high school education and were accepted here. They were accepted in a basement suite. And, my mom was just like a steady entrepreneur who always wanted to achieve better and who always thought she could do more. And, I think my mom probably at some point had fed every single person. Someone in the community would have eaten her food at some point in the time. And that was her greatest gift in life. And that's what really drove her. But my dad was super, like, consistent, right? Like, my dad worked at CP Rail for 35 years. And my dad was hard knocks. And, he would challenge me all the time about not being able to even make as much money as him one day. And now, unfortunately, both of my parents have passed, but I kind of, like, I'll always remember that about my dad, because he always challenged me, and maybe not from the best place, but kind of only what he knew contextually from where he came from, how to do that. And so I think, like, there's so many more people who are coming here that are having those same challenges, that are running through that. And I just feel like it's incumbent on us to support them as Canadians, because someone afforded us those opportunities. And now that I have this platform or this ability, how do I afford those folks that opportunity? And, it's funny, like, we have this debate all the time, me and my wife, about our kids, because it's like, how do you build children? We as parents who've been through so much, we want to provide the best opportunities for our children. And sometimes I find myself conflicted, because I want them to understand the things that we had to go through, right? So it's like, I read this great quote that, it's not our job to give our children the things that we didn't have. It's our job to teach them things that we didn't know. And so that's, like, what I really, like, try to now embody, is like, I can try to give, the city or a ton of money, or I could try to do all these things for my kids, but it's not about that. It's about how do I maybe empower someone to learn something from me that could make them better, or allow them to become better people, leaders, and use that as they kind of go on their journey. And so, like, Whitehorn was crazy, man. We did crazy things as kids. I mean, it's funny, you brought up Ferran. Like, Ferran's dad had a car. We called it the Boat. It was like a brown boat. It had, like, the furry leather, and we would unfortunately, like, I don't know how, I could never imagine kids doing this, but at like 14, we would sneak out. We would take the boat, push it out of the driveway. We would take it down the Annigale Hill. Like, can you imagine driving a boat down
Oh
Annigale
my
Hill?
God.
Like, yeah. And then like this is at like 3 a.m. And then we would go to the mosque, Parodi Akane, and then we would sit back and sip like the chai, like, and just it was so weird. Like, and today I couldn't imagine, like, I would be devastated if my kids ever tried to do something like that. Like, it was just, we had so much free will to really develop ourselves as kids and
100%. I
people.
remember even like during Kane time, mosque time, people would take the cars out and just go street racing or whatever.
Yeah, it was crazy times back then. So you're definitely always thinking like, how much did that do for us in building our foundation as who we are as people, and then how do we give our children in the future and kids that growth? We never had the stimulation that they had. We didn't have these devices. There was so much personal connectivity, and so that's one of the things. Again, like philosophically in our company, we're really driving about like, okay, technology is changing the way that we interact with each other. How do we still make sure people are connected? And the social anxiety, the social isolation. How do we start helping defeat some of those things by giving people places to collide? And how do we, I saw you outside our building, the general block right outside the park. The whole synopsis of that building was like, we need to build this here because people are going to post up with ice cream, coffee, pizza, and they're going to go and connect in the park. And it's phenomenal. Like it's exceeded my
proven. Like, I mean, I walk my dog there daily and I see people at the park, they're at the pizza shop, like you said, the ice cream shop, and it brought community together in especially at such a time right now. It's beautiful to see that come together.
Totally. And I think like that's again, like one of those things where I'm like, we can help encourage that. And that's what gives me like the strength to keep going. Cause like you, and I'm sure like we run fatigue, right? Like when you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to do so much and you're trying to like, you have these ambitions, at some point you hit a wall of fatigue, and then it's like, well, what's going to keep you going to kind of level up? What gets you there? And so for me, it's about finding consistency and making sure that the things that we're doing really align back to our core fundamentals of what we're trying to achieve. And so,
do you have the foot on the gas the whole time, or do you now slowly keep it this way? A lot, because we can burn out. That's one thing that.
Yeah. So I'm a 0 to 100 kind of guy. And I'm learning still every day how to be better at that, I would say. And this is that whole idea is like, we need to perpetually learn in order to be better. And one of the things that I think I'm spending more time on now is about, this company won't make it with me being 100. Like we won't get anywhere. This company will only make it if the people that decide to join us on this journey decide to take it there. And so that's one of the things that I've learned over, the course of the last 5 years is like, this is a team effort. I play a portion on that team. And then my brother Ushin plays another portion. And then, my wife, his wife, like everyone has a role. And now what I've, taken upon myself is like, how do I help build great leaders so that they can take this thing and now be the champions of it. And I hopefully will be able to always have my place and continue to kind of like, elevate myself, because ultimately, like, I want to work myself out of a job. Like I want my people to come in and say, we got this, like you go do what's next now. And so that's kind of what I'm really focused on is how do I help build better leaders within our organization? And then, if they outgrow us to go somewhere else, like that's got to be the biggest reward is if I've grown someone so much that they now have the confidence to go out and do it or have other opportunities. To me, that's a real successful relationship.
How does family and life and work separation happen for you guys? Because, you guys can meet up and say that deal didn't come through, or, you can blame one another. How do you separate it all?
Yeah, it's challenging, right? Because like we've been together for like the funny thing about me and my brothers is like we've been working together in some way or form since we were like 14. Like, we were always doing crazy things back in the day as kids. And so like I think like again, like we've always been involved with each other. We're not like that family that has never really been that involved. And so we've kind of developed this cadence and rhythm. The challenge is you introduce others into it, whether it be wives or kids, and you just have to be a lot more thoughtful. And I think that's the one thing I've learned is like, we're going to face these challenges. Like there's no question we're going to hit these challenges, of whether it be finance or whatever they may be. But it's just a matter of like giving yourself the grace to kind of make sure that you give yourself the time and opportunity to kind of get through those problems. And I think we've done an exceptional job at that. And again, it's really about alignment. It's like, where do we want to be? Are we all bought into this vision? And then what do we need from each person to make this business successful? Because I'm not the business, like Option is not the business. Like the business is its own entity. The question is how do we support it in order for it to actually truly grow?
No, for sure. Now, we talk about your mom. Your mom, actually, I've tried her food too, so that's how I know her and I remembered her.
Yeah.
Who was she to you other than a mom when you look back at life?
Yeah. So I lost my mom when I was 28 years old, and it was like 3 months after our first daughter was born. And
how old was she? Sorry, when?
Well, my mom was in 62 when she passed away. And my mom was my mentor. She was my psychologist. She was my best friend. Everything I knew about kind of candor, about tact, about business came from my mom. And so when people ask me like, who have you learned the most from? It was my mom. And I think the thing that is the most challenging for me is like not having her to teach my kids or, to continue to work with her. And so that's probably the thing that I struggle with the most, because I'm sure you do this too, Zach. It's like you have to replay conversations in your mind about like, and it's hard because you're always trying to go back and be like, oh, like what would she have done? And so I still have this deep connection with her, but like I wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for her.
Yeah, no, same here. I mean, I sometimes have old notes here with her handwriting on it, and I'm like, how do I do this? How do I get out of this? And sometimes you literally just take a step back and what would mom do here? Well, this August will be 2 years for me. And it's hard, hey? Because she was an entrepreneur, she was the foundation of the house. She was everything. Problems, like you said, psychologist, that's exactly what she was to me. She was our guardian angel, like literally, in the physical world. When your mom was taken away from you too early, you can never really be prepared. What was life for you right after that? Especially you're a young family.
Yeah, like I think I've said this before. Like my mom basically told me I could do anything I ever wanted to, and so with that, I always felt this sense of obligation to really meet that, right? Because I like there's no hiding it. I wasn't the greatest kid. Like I was bad. I was raw. Like I was as bad as they come, I would say, like amongst the community. And so even fitting within the Smiley community for me was very difficult because I always felt like this outsider, and I was really not. I was really not
just different.
Yeah, I was not the ideal child for my parents, and I made it very difficult for her. And she had, there was 4 of us. Unfortunately, my mom lost her first son, to cancer when he was 3 years old, and she traveled here as an immigrant, had to learn the bus system, and then learn her child was going to die while my dad was working all the time. And so like my mom went through like, just incredible amounts of adversity. And that's what always like brings me back to this, like, fuck man, like I haven't been through anything that she's been through. Like if I would have had to like go through the pain of losing a child, even like those are really, really tough things to have gone through.
And whatever they had in life, they made sure that we didn't have to. Like we never felt like we were missing out on anything,
Yeah. And then that's like, I mean, as a kid, I remember wanting to be white at times because I wanted to play hockey so bad and going to my friends' hockey games, like, and they're all kitted up in equipment and shit. But like, again, I never blamed my parents for not being able to do those things. But really, it was just like, I would put that on myself about like, what do I need to do in order to do those things? Like, it wasn't about like, oh, my parents weren't doing enough. It was like, if I wanted to do that, what would I have to do at that age in order to be doing it? So it's like, fuck, I'm going to get a paper route, or I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to do this. And so like, because I would watch their hustle and realize like, I can't sit back and expect them to do that when they're just trying to like, keep food on the table, like give us the basics. And so, it was.
Is that our chip on our shoulder? Because not everyone understands this grind or this hustle. Seriously, it's insane. And it's very similar to your story. Sometimes I'm sitting back, I'm saying, man, mom worked so hard and I'm not where I need to be. what am I doing with my life? She would keep going, but she also said, you got to smile, you got to be happy and laugh and enjoy life too. But, hard work. A lot of people, I guess, elder millennials, I'll say, they don't have it. And sometimes I do wish I was like them. I didn't have to worry so much. I didn't have to think outside the box.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that for people like you and I think that's probably the biggest thing is like, what does balance look like, right? So people talk about work-life balance. And for me, it's like, I don't see it as work-life balance. I just see it as like, what is the life that you want to lead and what pieces kind of fall within that. And, I have so many friends that are so content, like that are so good in where they are. And so oftentimes I look at them and I'm like, how come I can't feel like that? Mm-hmm. I just don't have that desire to feel like that. And so that's really difficult for me. And when I look at, I think my biggest responsibility right now for me is like, I want to be an amazing husband and I want to be an amazing father because I'm raising 2 girls. And I knew nothing about girls growing up, man, because I grew up with 3 boys. Like my mom was the only woman in the house and she had taught me a lot, but I didn't know what it was like to live with women. Like aside from my mom, she was different, right? She was one of us. And so like
she was
part of what I'm learning now is like, how do I learn to be more compassionate? How do I learn to build, leaders and understand the shit that I even did that was wrong to women? And how do I, you don't really know until you're around them. And this is one of the things that I've learned is like, I didn't know some of the things that females and women had to go through, and you didn't recognize it because you didn't really see them struggle or see the challenges or see like, the differences that exist in the world for males and females. So, that's something that I really try to now be aware of in my element with my kids, but also with people that I work with about how do I be a champion of those that are, vulnerable or that never had the right representation, whether that be racially, genderly, whatever that is more important to me now than it's ever been. And so,
when you look, like your parents, are they from Tanzania or Kenya?
Yeah. So my parents actually originally are both from India, Gujarat. All of my mom's family is still in Gujarat. My dad migrated to Uganda when he was like 13 to work with my uncle. And so he was in Uganda for most of his childhood. And then he went back and married my mom, arranged marriage in India, and then brought her out to Uganda. And then they lived there until the 70s when Idi Amin kind of basically said all of them had to leave, and then ended up here in Canada through, Hazar Mom and Justin Trudeau's father. So yeah, that was kind of my parents' journey and how we ended up here, but still deeply rooted connections. I still have tons of cousins in India. I've visited quite a few times, and I'm always kind of like,
Did your mom make mandazis?
Yeah, I'm sure at some point for sure did.
Her pilau, and oh my God.
Yeah.
When mom went away, how lonely did you feel in life? And how did you cope with it and get out of the dark times? Because we'll say no one understands it but us, and grief works differently for everybody else. But how was it for you?
Yeah. You know what? I was super fortunate and lucky to have not only my wife, but also like to have a daughter, which is the one thing my mom always wanted. Oh. I just felt so like humbled by is to like, my mom wanted a girl so bad and she never got one. And so like, I have this beautiful like girl, and my mom was so excited for me because she just said like, her whole thing is like girls will never leave you. Like they'll always take care of you. And so once you have a girl, you have her for life. And she always believed that. And so for me, it was always like, I had this new being in like, felt like almost like a manifestation for me, like of realizing my mom's dream. And so like, I was lucky to have kind of like a crutch with this baby girl. And I mean, like Isla has been that for me the whole time, is like just about, reminding me how close all those things kind of happened together. I saw, death and birth, and, with my mom, we lost her to cancer. I kind of knew it was coming. I was lucky and fortunate to have conversations with her about that. And I feel bad for folks that don't have those opportunities, but, I was given the grace of saying, okay, we're moving on. And I needed to get closure with my mom. And I felt lucky to do that. And more importantly, I feel lucky to have her for the time that I even did, right? Like I know a lot of folks didn't even get that. And I was lucky enough to have that. And for her to be this pillar for me and continue to serve for me to move forward.
I'm sure you get signs of her sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, all the time, and it's funny. Like my relationship with my mom is obviously different than my brother's. Like I was the
100%.
youngest. I was the youngest. For the first part of my life, my brothers probably played a more of a critical role in raising me than even my parents did because my middle brother Zemo had like he had a congenital heart problem when he was born, and so they told him he wouldn't live till he was like 9, and he was in and out of open heart surgeries up until he was like still even now. And so Zemo was like a miracle survival. And so my mom went from losing a son to cancer to potentially losing another son to a heart condition, which, mentally had literally crushed her, right? Like she suffered from depression. She suffered from anxiety, which, I think at the time was like, oh, you take Prozac, and my mom just like always struggled with it. And that showed up in my life as well. But I just, like I said, the humility and the composure that my mom still showed is always just like, it's beyond me, because like the things that she'd had to go through to get us to where we are just makes me feel like, when you talk about like, why do we have that grit, that tenacity, is because like, I just don't want to take it for granted. I don't want to take the fact that I've been given this opportunity and just squander it. And so it's like, the city has given me so much and I have an obligation to give back.
No. When did Dad pass away, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So it's been 3 years now.
Has it been
And
that long for your dad?
yeah, yeah.
He used to volunteer, I remember, too, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's even
We're
kind of
just coming up. Yeah, North was kind of like my dad was every single day too, right? Like he was, yeah, service was like my dad's thing. Like, and unfortunately for my dad, like losing my mom, 10 years early was the toughest thing for him. Cause like you said, she was his rock. Like she did everything for him. And so my dad had to find kind of this new sense of purpose. And I think, he did the best he could with what he had left. And, we tried to support him, and it's challenging, man. Those are tough things. So
And for the listeners, you guys, humbly did this with your dad, even though, just like our parents, they grew up very simple. They just wanted their kids to do the best they could, and like you said, our parents were like, especially my mom and your mom, if you want to do it, you can do it. Sky's the
yeah,
limit here, kind of thing. My dad's alone now too, and I think about this. How long do I have with him left in life? I mean, he's in his 60s, and you wonder now, right? You start counting days, and how many moments will we have? You guys came together and you built your dad a home. That's a remarkable story. I mean, coming from East Africa, your dad, your mom, where they started in the basement, to their children being able to do that for them without them wanting it. That's an honor
yeah,
from a son's standpoint and a father's standpoint.
yeah. I mean, probably it's funny because my dad didn't want it, right? So like, my dad's such a simple guy where he was like, man, I don't really need a house. Like, I don't know why you're doing this. Like, I don't know why you guys. He didn't want it, and so it's my dad was just such a hard knocks, just simple, right? And so that was so much more important to me than it probably was to him, because I think it was something that I think my mom wanted as well, and I know my dad appreciated it once he got in there, but for sure it was one of those kind of like those were one of the things that I always wanted to do, it's funny because it transcends him. Like it was just something that was so important to me that I held on to, and then honestly, like that's part of this thing is like you kind of have to dig deep to realize the things that you need for yourself versus what you think other people need for him, and that's one of those things that I've been really working on is like I need to focus on what I need for me in order to really be helpful to others around me, and to being able to finally start to recognize that is super powerful, because you get to realize like these are the things that are important to me, and if I really prioritize that, it's going to be tremendously beneficial to everyone around me.
We work so hard, and we can say we do this for ourselves, but we also do it for our parents, for that generation. When mom and dad, now that they're not here in the physical world, they'll always be with you, but they're not here in the physical world. How do you find, I don't know, drive, purpose to be like doing this for you guys? I'm trying to make you proud. And I know you're doing it for your family, your wife, your kids, and everybody, the community. But how do you find that? Because that was your pillar. That's your family. That's where you're from.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like I said, my mom was that person for me who sacrificed everything, not just for us, but for the greater community. Like my parents have showed me the sacrifice at time. Like we've heard Nancy say it, we all know the word, but like my parents were dedicated to Seva, right? Like my parents believed that if they did good in the community in general, that would come back to them in some fold, in some way, and without ever knowing what that looked like or how that would manifest itself. And so that's really been kind of ingrained in me, is like, as much as I want to hustle, I want to do good work, and I want to be proud of the work that I do, and I want to uplift people while doing it. And to simply say like, yeah, I'm just trying to leave like, some money for my kids and my family, and so we can live in a house and travel, like that's not my mandate. It's not my mission. It's bigger than that. And I want to be able to support more people, and hopefully, give someone something that gives them the power to go out and accomplish what they did, just like my mom did for me, because that may not be the situation for so many of these kids. And so how do I go back and say like, you can do anything you want, and this is what it could look like.
How important is it, the power of words? And for someone, like our parents, they didn't have a lot of money, but having our moms believe in us is the most powerful thing.
Yeah, man, particularly like when no one else did, right? Like when you feel like, okay, like all your teachers are telling you like you're probably not going to graduate high school, you probably won't get out of junior high, like you're never going to go to university. Like those were like the growing up in the environments that I went to, like those are resounding themes. But then you would like, those were the chips for me that give me the leverage that I need, right? Like I never looked at those as like, oh, that person shouldn't have said that to me, because like that's what I needed to hear. Like that's what was my superpower, is like when my principal told me like in grade 3 that like I would never amount to anything. Like I couldn't imagine a principal saying that to my kid today. I would go nuts. But at the time, like that's what I needed to hear, because I was just so off the rails. Like I needed someone to challenge me in a place that I've never been challenged before. And that's when I kind of found my true greatness. And so my mom was always this like, resounding messenger for me to say, you can do what you want. And a lot of people look at those negative, moments in their lives as like things that kick them down. But I often feel like those are the things that also contributed to me actually finding the growth that I did. And, you think about the David and Goliath story, like, and you think about, the idea of like a lot of the greatness that comes from people are people who've been given nothing. And I always looked at that as like, that was my opportunity, because I was put through those moments that nothing was beneath me. Like I would, clean toilets, I would mop floors, I would work at a gas station, I worked at and I did all those things because I just felt like I didn't have any sense of privilege, right? Like I just felt like I could do anything. And even now, like I don't have that fear. Like I know I could do anything, and I could go back to having to do those things. And even now I'm willing to pick up a broom at a site if things are not clean. Like I don't really have that prestige by any means.
You kept it real.
Yeah. And I mean, I think so many of us like do and will. And I think it's just about a matter of like, just reminding people like that sense of pride doesn't mean that you're not willing to get your hands dirty. Like to build the best things that we built, you kind of have to do it from the ground up, is what I feel like.
When people start saying is you start making money, ego comes into play. How did you remain so humble through this whole process in life, man? Or is it because you understand what it takes to get it? And
I guess I just like,
and let's say not say money, but like say for example, you've won many awards with Round Square. How does that not get to your head? And how do you stay level-headed and low-key?
Yeah, I guess like I didn't get into this to like win awards or get notoriety. Like that's not why I did this. I did it because I thought that I could do something that was impactful and make change. And it's funny, like Zach, everyone talks about the notoriety, but no one talks about the negativity and the challenges that we face every day, right? Like I get ridiculed all the time about like ruining communities, about like, at one time I was in a community meeting and someone told me to go back to Forest Lawn. Like that shit's real. Like it's happening every day and it doesn't stop. And so like that the challenges that we face as well for being, a visible minority and for working in a, development in real estate is like, it's the old boys club, man. Like it's dominated by, a lot of older, primarily white guys who run the city, who run the industry. And it is what it is. And I think there's a bit of a change of the tide, but you got to imagine for a bunch of young kids who have like dreams about like what things could look like and how we may develop differently and challenge the idea of new growth community versus established growth community. Like, we're talking about institutional guys who have money, who have been here for a very long time, who have political pull, who have financial pull, who have connections deep into this community. And then you have someone like us who is like, we're kind of the small engine that thinks we could, and we think it could be really meaningful. And so, there's this fine balance. And, even as of recently, like I've been told like I need to be careful about, the way that I use our platform to talk about politics. And, I've made it very clear, like there's certain things that I will not condone, nor will I support, nor do they line up corporately with who we are as a company. And if I'm not willing to go out and say that, then I don't deserve to be here. Like I'm not going to pretend that I represent something that I don't. And I don't feel like it's like, again, it's that idea of like, I need people to be aware about where our city is going, what the future should look like, what growth should look like, and what I believe in. It doesn't mean you have to believe in that, but it's important and incumbent upon me to at least share where I feel like that needs to look like.
And a lot of people stay silent, or they don't want to put it up because they're afraid to get ridiculed, or their reputation, or, like you said, you might be financed by someone that believes opposite of you. How did you get to the level of comfort to say, I'm okay to speak and not afraid to lose? Put something up on your social media, but on your story, and you were quite vocal and you're upset about it. And I was like, good on you for doing that, to share openly.
Yeah. And I think like a choice of words is probably really important. Like I'm not, sometimes I could use better words in terms of how I convey my messages, and I think it could get further. But like, yeah, I'm genuinely upset about people who are, misinformation, construing the way things are actually, and don't stand for things. Like you don't stand for anything, so you don't deserve to be recognized. And like I get it, like someone got elected, they convinced enough people that they became an elected official. That's fine. I understand you have a seat, you have a role, you play that role. But what I will not stand for is kind of like the blatant lies or misinformation that you continue to spew. And that's what really frustrates me, is like, if you're going to stand for something, like if you are going to stand for something, then stand for that. Like there's sitting councilors that I know they stand for something. It doesn't align with what I stand for, but still philosophically, man, I still like that guy. I still love the fact that he's like, this is what I am. I don't give a shit if you agree, Al, but this is who I am. I can get behind that. But when someone doesn't stand for anything and just kind of politically grandstands and tries to take positions based on kind of momentum, and most importantly, Zach, this, like if you're going to be a leader of a city, it's about rallying people. You need to rally people around your ideas. And it's not just about rallying votes and getting people to vote for you, right? It's about like rallying around things that we need to do in order to get to where we need to go as a city. And so like, you need to rally your colleagues, which are your councilors. There's 15 people there. You need to rally the administration, the 5,000 staff of the city of Calgary. Those are the people that we need that will drive our engine to change. And there's some huge structural, massive problems that the city is dealing with that go back hundreds of years. It's not like we've created this. Yeah, this problem wasn't created 5 years ago. It's like we have some structural problems that need to be repaired. It ties into provincial, and
we have 21 elected candidates right now for the mayoral election. This is going to be interesting. Again, like you said, there's a lot of the old monies behind some of, and that money is powerful in terms of legal, in terms of controlling.
Yeah, no, I guess like ultimately, like this happens every election. Mm-hmm. You have people with influence and power who back a certain candidate in hopes that they'll get support and be able to kind of help control the outcome of our city. But like, this is where I'm at, is like the young people should be driving the outcome. This is a grassroots bottom up movement. Tech will happen in our city if we allow it to. And if we allow the people who are in the weeds to give them the support they need in order to elevate. Like that's what we need to do. And so there's this ground up investment movement that needs to happen. Like, you know, you think about the pipeline, like, cool, like that's a $1 billion bet. But like, if you would have invested $1 billion into technology companies in Alberta, shit would be real right now, like really different.
Jobs
and so
would
like
be here. Yeah.
And I mean, like, cool, like that's the bet that they made. And it's like, cool, that didn't work, but like, what are we doing now? Like, let's get alignment on what we're doing now. Like, are we investing in transit? Are we investing in the future of our cities? Are we investing in walkability? Are we investing in our downtown core? Like, those are the things that are going to help us get to where we need to go. And what I want is a mayor who has a platform that understands those things.
Right. And when we look at the candidates, you know, everyone's got certain strengths and of course weaknesses. I think the transparency and honesty is what we need. We don't want games anymore.
You know, and that's why, like, you know, I think there's a number of candidates that would do really well. And obviously, you know, I think there's one candidate that I think would be an absolute disaster. And it's not because the people do. Okay. So let's take away all of the grandstanding that we look at. If you were to go out and I'm sure we can pull this data, historically, he votes 10% outside of council. So 90% of the votes that happen, 100% of the votes, 10% of the time, he's on his own. Like he's nowhere near where everyone else is moving. Right. So if you were consistently an outlier and you've never championed anything, you've never gotten anything fucking approved, how would you ever be our mayor? And so that's my whole fundamental problem is like, we're going to lose a bunch of good people if he becomes mayor because no one's going to work at the city anymore. But the reality is like he's one of 15. And so what's going to happen is we're going to have someone else who's going to basically do his job for him because we'll have other councilors that are better, more prepared, understand how to do business. But it's the messaging that I'm nervous about is like globally, Farkas will be our mayor. And that's what really frustrates me. And that's why I said, like,
when you look at the three, I mean, like I could say 3 or 4 that, you know.
Yeah, be completely transparent. And if I had a choice, like I could probably 1-2 them.
What would your ideal mayor be? Like when you look at this grand scheme, what's or your ideal mayor and what's the ideal mayor for Calgary that you're hoping for?
Yeah. So again, I think hopefully like my ideal mayor of who I think should be mayor or what the city should be is like someone who understands that the future is ever evolving. Like things are evolving at an incredible pace. You think about technology and all the things that have happened to us, whether it be Uber, Amazon, Skip the Dishes, like all of those things have transformed the way that we live. We can't work in, you know, these ideas of like, you know, people feel like 5-year plans, like sure, put out a 5-year plan, but understand that we need to be fluid. And the biggest thing that we need to do is like, Calgary is one of the best places in the world, in my mind, to live. Like I've traveled everywhere and I still would choose Calgary every day to live. And so how do we get that back? Like, how do we get that energy back? How do we get those kids back? How do we get people excited about the fact that this place is amazing? You know, we have the mountains on our doorstep. Great place to kind of raise a family. Our food scene is incredible. Our cultural scene is incredible. We got these amazing museums. And so for me, it's really about who's going to drive that messaging, who's going to champion that kind of bottom up growth, and who's going to make the tough decisions to say, man, this is what we have to do. These are the investments that we have to make. These are the things we have to stop doing in order for us to get to where we need to go.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, Nenchi's put in all this work. Structurally, we have this good foundation. We have somewhere where we're going. I know a lot of people didn't like Nenchi, and people think like, you know, people think that Nenchi and us are friends. Like I've never had a meeting with Nahid in 8 years on one-on-one that was intentional. He's never met with us because he doesn't meet with developers, anybody. So it's like, he's like as straight as an arrow. There's like, and it's almost like people are like, oh, he's anti-business. It's like, no, he's just really about fundamentals. Like he really knows where he wants to spend his time. And so I've ran into him at airports where we've had conversations, but I've never got a meeting with him ever. And so it's like, I have a ton of respect for what he's done. I think he struggles with ego and kind of sometimes about like being the smartest guy in the room syndrome. But man, he's a dedicated Calgarian. Like
he's a public servant. That's who he is.
Man, he gave us some great years of his life. And I think like anyone who challenges that should be remiss by that, because I feel like he's given us so much.
It's so much easier to blame people also through a screen. Anybody puts something up on social media right now. If you say I'm vaccinated, people's like, oh, great. Now they have a chip in your shoulder. You can't.
Everything's canceled, right? Yeah. And this is the whole thing. Like when you talk about standing for something, like, the Black Lives Matter movement happened. And then, people were nervous, man. Like no one knew what to say. And so, you have people reaching out like, man, I don't want to get canceled. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And you saw like, I don't know if you saw what happened with like the fiasco gelato, like James went out and said something. And then it was like, oh, we need to cancel James. And it's like, man, like if we continue to try to like millennial cancel people, how will we ever encourage people to speak up? Like, how will we ever know if they're making mistakes? So is it safer for them to hide in their own mind with their thoughts rather than share them and then to learn what the issues are? And so like, we can sit here and say, we all know better. The reality is we fucking don't, man. Like,
and James didn't go out there to hurt anybody or be mean. No, he was actually trying to be supportive of the cause.
And for sure, there's better ways to do that. It's like, thought you had an agency, couldn't you had someone at the table that was there? But like, I think I told this story on my Instagram, like, or my Twitter. I said, like, I took my daughter to Brothers Cuts in Forest Lawn because Ted's a good buddy of mine. I've known him forever.
Still there, Teddy?
Yeah. So Ted's been like, he's been like a silent mentor for me for, over like 20 years when I first met Ted. And he's like the epitome of culture. You know what I mean? Like he's cutting kids' hair for free all the time. He's been a staple in the community. He knows everything that's happening. Anyways, my daughter wanted to get her hair braided. I called Ted and he's like, okay, yeah, I'll get it done. And we go there and, I was like, the girl braiding out his hair was like, your braids are not going to stay in because your hair is just not conducive to this stuff. And she's like, that's cool. I'm just excited to be here and like get braids and like only stay in for a certain amount of time. But anyways, the woman's asking her questions like, do you have any Black friends? And I was like, no, I don't have any Black friends. Like I don't have any friends in my school that are Black. And she's like, oh, so she's like, well, how'd you end up here? Oh, my dad knows the barber. And then I left with Isla and she's telling me about these conversations. And the one thing I quickly recognized is like, I'm from that culture, but she's completely removed from that culture. So even her within that element was like, oh, this is weird. Why is everyone in here Black? Like, this is not normal for me. And it took me to have my 10-year-old tell me that like, that's not normal for her. So you think about all these other people that having grown up around, different types of people. Yeah, they don't know how to respond or react or have conversations. My own daughter didn't even know how to do that. As much as we talk about this shit at home all the time, but she's not living those moments, like physically dealing with it with children. And so
the time frame is not long. I mean, 10 years ago, you'd go to the southwest of Calgary and you'd rarely see a colored person living there. Now you go, it's different.
Yeah. 100%. And that has changed for sure. And I think we're seeing more diversity from, whatever our ethnic diversity. What we're not seeing is the socio-demographic diversity, right? Like, you cross the Deerfoot, those people, the income levels drop like in half. And so you have poor Black people, you have poor brown people, you have poor Vietnamese people, but then you come on this side and you have people that are not poor. You're seeing the diversity in color, but you're not seeing in what their socioeconomic statuses are and the things that they go through. And so that's one of the things that I really think is important about like, how do we create complete communities? How do we give people the opportunity? And Bridgeline has like affordable housing. Like, how do we give those people that infrastructure to help kind of elevate them as people? Because to me, like the projects should not be in one part of our city. They should be dispersed throughout our city, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, bro, for today.
All good, man. Shot too many of them. Cool, man. Okay, well, thanks for including me. I appreciate it.
We'll grab a coffee soon.
Let's do it. Yeah.